The next case is going to be by Dr. Ashish Markan. He's currently with us here at the PGI in Chandigarh as a second year MCH Vitro Retina Fellow. And he's going to be, we all know about, siderosis in the eye. He's going to be talking about a siderotic vitreous. So let's see what Ashish has to say. Ashish, please.
Very good morning to all. So, at the outset, I'd like to thank Mohit sir and Professor Amandeep sir for giving me a chance to present my case here at this wonderful platform. So, I'll be presenting a case of a 25-year-old male who presented to us in August 2020. He had a history of a probable hammer chisel injury in the left eye while working about 3 months back. He was diagnosed as a case of closed globe injury outside and was managed conservatively. Now, the patient presented to us with sudden onset diminution of vision in the left eye from last 7 days. He was diagnosed as a case of left eye rhegmatogenous retinal detachment outside and was planned for buckling surgery. Patient came to eye center for a second opinion. So, on ocular examination, the right eye was absolutely normal. The best corrected visual acuity was 6 by 6, and the posterior segment showed presence of a superior lattice. Whereas in the left eye, the best corrected visual acuity was hand movements close to face. The intraocular pressures were 14 millimeters of mercury. And the posterior segment findings I will be showing in a subsequent Amsler-Dubois chart. So in the left eye, the patient had a total rhegmatogenous retinal detachment, which was quite bullous with presence of a superior lattice with holes. Also, the retina had a slightly brownish discoloration and there were presence of these multiple golden yellowish particles in the vitreous cavity. So as the patient had a history of hammer chisel injury, so we suspected that probably patient had a self-sealed scleral perforation at that time and had a retained intraocular foreign body. And these golden particles could have disintegrated from the surface of the foreign body and they have come into the vitreous cavity, though any definite foreign body could not be localized clinically. We also got a USG done, and ultrasonography through these particles showed a very high spike with a posterior backshadowing, suggestive of metallic nature of these particles. But again, we could not localize the foreign body, and we got a NCCT head and orbit. And NCCT head and orbit revealed a large intraocular foreign body which was present in the infratemporal quadrant, just behind the lens in the at the pars plana. So as there were these multiple metallic particles in the vitreous cavity, and also the retina had slightly brownish discoloration. So we thought that the ocular siderotic changes have started to set in. So we made a diagnosis of left eye retained intraocular foreign body with ocular siderosis with rhegmatogenous retinal detachment. And so patient was planned for a pars plana vitrectomy with a gas tamponade. So I'll be showing the surgical video. So after 360-degree peritomy was done and a 240 band was passed, 25G ports were made. So there were no evidence of any open globe injury in the eye. So after the core vitrectomy was started, here we can see that there were multiple golden yellowish particles in the vitreous cavity. What was surprising was that all these particles they could be easily eaten up with the vitreous cutter. So after subsequent amount of core vitrectomy as well as mid peripheral vitrectomy was performed, so tricot was injected onto the disc to look for PVD status. So PVD was already present. So here we can see the retina is so brownish and had a brownish discoloration. So as the retina was quite bullous, so I decided that I'll do first a fluid exchange to flatten out the retina so that the details can be clearly visible. So after the retina was flattened, then I went ahead and performed the rest of the vitrectomy in the mid peripheral as well as the peripheral areas. So here you can see the vessels are totally sclerosed in the infotemporal area, and there were these pigmented patches. So on depression in the infotemporal area, there was this clump of yellowish material. So after I shaved off this material, I could see an underlying foreign body. So this foreign body was then isolated and was separated from the that clump of yellowish material. So once the foreign body was isolated, then I injected PFCL bubble on the disc as well as macula, and then using a chandelier light and with the help of an intraocular magnet which was inserted through a sclerotomy, and with the help of a bimanual technique, uh, the foreign body was taken out of the eye along its longitudinal axis with the help of end gripping forceps. So after this, the sclerotomy site was sutured, the PFCL bubble was removed from the eye, and finally a fluid air exchange was performed to flatten the retina. Once the retina was flattened, then finally the retinotomy as well as the superior lattice with holes, they were lasered, and a 14% C3F gas was put as a tamponating agent. So this is the post-operative image of the patient at 3 weeks. So there was about 50% gas fill. The retina was attached. Also, we could see that in the infratemporal quadrant there were these sclerosed vessels, and also there was this pigmentary lesions or pigmentation which was present in the subretinal space in the infranasal quadrant, suggestive of some sclerotic changes. So my take-home message is that we must look for occult signs of open globe injury and suspect intraocular foreign body, especially in cases of a suspected hemorrhageal injury. And the changes of ocular sidrosis can set in early, and the localization of foreign body requires a detailed clinical as well as radiological investigations, and we must plan our surgery accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish, for that wonderfully done surgery, and kudos to you on that. And before I'm actually going to go straight to Sangeet Mittal, sir. But before I do that, I'm just going to take the liberty and answer Veer's query that he had put up regarding the previous talk. I'm sorry I missed it. So he's actually asked, is it worthwhile doing a peripheral smear for all vascular occlusive diseases as a routine practice? I would say no, because I think if you're looking at a vascular occlusive disease, it would include inflammatory and non-inflammatory both. So if you're looking at inflammations, I think there is enough data out there to suggest that if it's a primarily occlusive retinal vasculitis, then given our kind of setup, you're looking at tuberculosis, Behçet's, maybe some other things, but a primarily occlusive retinal vasculitis is not something which you're looking at. A hemorrhagic retinopathy, I think, which is bilateral, which is what the panelists had also alluded to. Absolutely, extremes of ages, atypical presentation in which there is a bilateral hemorrhagic retinopathy, CRVO-like picture, tortuosity of vessels, or associated granularity. Absolutely, you should. As far as occlusive retinal disease is concerned, it doesn't hurt, but I don't think a primarily occlusive disease without too many other things would be one of the manifestations of CML. With that,
comment. I asked that because Raja sir mentioned that even BRVOs which are bilateral. So if you have any suspicion, I thought maybe that was a relevant question.
No, absolutely. That's great. I think thank you, Veer, for posting that, man. So again, coming to this presentation, I'd like to go straight to Dr. Sangeet, sir. So you've done, I think you have the maximum experience as far as dealing with intraocular foreign bodies is concerned. Your proximity to J&K, I think after Amritsar, you get to see a lot of these patients. So again, I'd like to you to give your pearls, sir, and your comments on managing.
One thing, Mohit, like all these pellet foreign bodies are not iron and they don't lead to sidrosis, but definitely what he has pointed, what Dr. Ashish has pointed out, is this golden glow. Sometimes when you see in a patient of a trauma, you suspect intraocular foreign body, and I've seen this happening. I've operated all these sidrosis patients where everything is brown. The cornea is brown, the lens is brown, and you have to do everything. You have to do the transplant, you have to remove the lens, and then you have to tackle the retina. One thing more is like in these patients, when you do an indirect ophthalmoscopy, and you see that golden thing present in the vitreous or on the retinal surface, you suspect that there is a foreign body, and you have to plan accordingly. Two more things. One thing, that the retina is very fragile in these cases. The older the trauma, the retina becomes very fragile due to this sidrosis, and you have to take care when you are operating the retinal detachment. In these cases, it just behaves as you are operating an ARN case. Sometimes it's just like that. So these things you have to take care. You have to sometimes remove the lens. Sometimes you have to do a planet transplant together, because the view is very bad in these cases.
Absolutely, sir. Points taken. Raman, sir, any pointers, any points from your side, sir, regarding the case?
So, what I was, looking at this at a different angle, is it sidrosis of the vitreous? No. So this is just a simple encapsulation of the foreign body, what we see. What happened is, over the time, trauma was somewhere in May. So you have encapsulation around the foreign body, and that's a kind of a savior also. Encapsulated foreign body doesn't cause sidrosis, but they do because the size is very big. So some of the iron gets into the fibrous capsule also. In this patient, because of the PVD and this capsule somehow got broken, and some of these capsular particles are mixed with iron came into the vitreous. So these golden things are usual, encapsulated foreign body components. This is what I feel, because nobody has documented that vitreous per se. They've shown that vitreous degeneration can happen, but it would have been better that you could have sampled these particles, sampled the vitreous and shown that there is a ferric ion there, and it would have been wonderful. But yes, the siderotic changes can occur to the underlying RPE and salt and pepper fundus, but these golden things are nothing but the fragments of the capsule. This is what my take on this case is.
Absolutely, sir. So we stand corrected, Ashish, when we said that it's siderotic vitreous. It's not, as sir rightly pointed out. Raja, sir, can I have your comment?
It's debatable.
Absolutely, sir.
This is what I feel.
No, absolutely, sir. Agreed.
But one thing, Dr. Raman, I'd like to add is like this type of encapsulation, this golden, is generally seen with iron foreign bodies, not with other foreign bodies.
Absolutely.
A lot of glass foreign bodies.
Absolutely.
Raja, sir, can I have your comments on? So there is also a question regarding this, in the chat box that's been posted by Dr. Priya, and the question is actually regarding the role of ERG. I'm just going to extrapolate the question, and so one thing is to, if a patient has very good vision, 6/6, and you're not sure whether it's a or not. And you want to monitor the patient, is the role of ERG in that setting. And this question in which it's been asked that in the post-operative period, after you've removed, like in this, I believe Dr. Priya asked, if particularly this case, in the post-op period, the fact that there were so many pieces, although a complete vitrectomy was done and everything was removed, is there a role of serial follow-up ERGs in the post-op period in this patient?
Yeah, again, very good question. In fact, this one case can take the discussion in so many different angles. But one thing which I feel the main objective, probably among the others, is that when to suspect. So if you don't suspect, you will miss many things. So right from the history itself, when you say chisel and hammer injury, even if the patient says, no, it fell down, it hit my eye and came out, no way that you can accept the patient's history, or the first ophthalmologist finding that there is no, everything is normal, we checked inside the eye, there was no problem. So at this point of time, I would say that whenever Ramandeep, he brought out a very important point, that sometimes even if there is good encapsulation, it can be severe for the patient. And I have left some cases where they are coming after 3 years and saying that, on X-ray and CT, now they have found foreign body, and I see only capsule stuck to retina choroid. And if you try and go and remove, you will only damage more than what you are trying to do. That's one angle or one extreme where, naturally the patient may do well. But in many cases, we are not suspecting because we assume the patient is right, or the first ophthalmologist who are mentioned that no abnormality detected was fine. So either iris hole, or even if there is a slight chemoceral subconjunctival hemorrhage, chisel hammer injury, better to get an X-ray if not a CT scan. I will just show you one, if you permit, one video. I'll share one screen. Please. And the topic, or the what I mentioned here, is that to suspect is my job. So I'll just show the video. This was a patient who came to our cornea colleagues, and they repaired the scleral tear, and they found that there was some conjunctival reaction, or redness was not going away, and they thought that the reaction, AC reaction, was more. So then they referred to us, is there any endophthalmitis? So the point was that after a week of the scleral tear repair, this patient was sent to us, and then I took on this with my fellow Anirudh, who is currently my fellow, did a great job, and we have opened up now just to see if there is any sign of any foreign body or anything else amiss. It was bleeding a lot, and if you see, the eye otherwise looks quiet, no iris hole or anything. But then we went inside, there was some vitreous hemorrhage, but right near the pars plana. That's where you need to suspect. First of all, you suspect based on the history. then you look inside. When you see do the vitreous, you see something projecting. It's not looking like a foreign body. But if you are not going to go after it, and you say, oh, a fakey young patient, 25, 30, or I don't want to damage the lens, it's just like some, you may think it's a granuloma or condensed hemorrhage. No, I said, no, we will not leave this. I mean, we didn't have, at that time, this was posted for query endophthalmitis. Nobody even suspected a foreign. I said, I'm not taking him out of the OR without removing that material. And there we had to sacrifice the lens. We had to cut out the iris also. And then you will see that we started having a glimpse of the foreign body, and then we removed this. So, I mean, obviously, if we have a CT scan prior itself or an X-ray, we will definitely make sure that we have removed it. But unfortunately, I was in the operation theater. This was that posted for query endophthalmitis, just check what's going on. So, but then we had to suspect. Our job was to suspect based on the history, and based on what's going on there in the pars plana area, we had to remove that. So the point here is that, whenever you have a strong suspicion on history, and even sometimes, as has been mentioned on examination, you have to do, and you may have to do sacrifice for that. But coming to ERG, once you have done, your patient has retinal detachment, obviously its interpretation becomes very difficult. And sometimes, ERG changes would be there whenever you have patients with siderosis, it will be there. But follow-up patient also, once you put silicone oil or something, the oil reduces the electrical conductance. So the wave, at least the amplitude will not be good at all, even once you put the silicone oil in these cases. But if you put gas again, once the gas goes away, yes, you may be able to check. Only if you're suspecting multiple foreign bodies, in the sense there may be sometimes multiple foreign bodies also, and if I have not been able to remove all of them, it can give a clue that if it is worsening, yes, it can give a clue. But usually these kind of injury, chisel hammer injury, usually they are only one foreign body. What you see as diffuse ones, those are like not multiple during the time of injury. They may dissolve a little bit here and there. But overall, I would say ERG is a very difficult thing to monitor when it complicates retinal detachment. Even after settling the retina, ERG may be subnormal once you have reattached the retina.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
I think for the young fellows, I think the most important thing, Mohit, before moving on to next case, is X-ray. We should remember that radiologically we should get X-ray for each and every case of where a suspecting the earlier we used to get it done, and I think we should do this activity. X-ray is very important. Yeah,
very good, very nice point. Just one of the cheapest things, get an X-ray. It's very, very sensitive.
And it also has very serious medical legal ramifications if we tend to unfortunately miss it. So that's also absolutely so. The point is very well driven there. Absolutely. So with that, a little bit of a change in schedule. This is for the audience. So as per the flyer, the keynote talk by Dr. Sangeet Mittal was set to take place after 5 cases were over. But we actually, it was actually Sangeet sir's idea, and I think a great idea at that. So he actually has multiple videos showcasing his surgical skills using the 27 gauge system. So we have actually broken them up into 4 groups, which will kind of mirror the cases which have just happened. So the first lot of those, sir will be presenting, which will be ocular trauma. So can I request Sangeet Mittal sir to please share his slide? And while he's doing that, can I have one question with Dr. Raman, sir, please, since it was your work, which I was also a part of. So there's this question in the chat box by Raghavendra regarding the role of autofluorescence that might be there in to rule out or to look at diagnosing CMV retinitis as opposed to in patients with hemorrhages and all of that. So since you have your publication on that, sir, can I have your comments on that?
Raghavendra, if you make it zone 1, 2, 3. In zone 3 in the periphery, you will not be able to do a good FAF because of the various reasons. So FAF works for the zone 1 and zone 2. It doesn't work for the hemorrhagic disease, only works for the granular variety of CMV retinitis. So if you have a granular variety of CMV retinitis, if you have hyper FAF, that means the lesion is active, and if there is a hypo, that lesion is probably healed. It works only for the granular variety, not for the hemorrhagic variety. So in these hemorrhagic varieties, they will be blocked. FAF.
Absolutely, sir. So no role in this, Raghavendra, as was said. So